Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Happy Halloween. I am
dude.
a bit...
What is with the glitching? It's like so delayed right now. We weren't this delayed 5 seconds ago.
Oh, I don't know. It sounds okay on my end. This must be your internet connection, but I am a little bit under the weather. Tom is extremely tired, so both of us are going to have tired or weird-sounding voices. But we could not delay the recording of this podcast because we're recording this on Monday night, and tomorrow night is Halloween, so there is no postponing of this podcast. And we have many, many questions, so I'll let Tom do his thing, and we'll get to as many as we can. And he can't hear me.
Glitching out. I can't hear you. You say, let Tom do his...
Are you plugged in?
I am plugged in. I think my family's in the other room. They're still doing homework and stuff out there.
Are other people like watching Netflix in your house or something?
I cannot.
No,
they are not allowed to watch Netflix while I'm doing this. It's not that I ever stop them. I don't have to stop them because the only place we ever watch Netflix is in here where the theater is. So... Speaking of theater, I have been working on my home theater panels. I went from the idea that I would get the special coverings and do all that, and I did a little looking at that this weekend and then went, ugh, too much trouble. So I'm just covering them in black fabric. This is the way they were before.
All right.
It defeats the purpose, but whatever. They are smaller and they're going to look better in here, so I'm happy with that, but I'm a little irritated.
Okay.
That it was going to be so much of a hassle. Rob W. If you go to AVRant.com and search for absorption panels Rob W, you will find his instructions, and they're very clear and they're very easy, but it's still a tedious task that I don't want to have to do. So what it came down to was laziness on my part, and yeah, I still may end up getting custom covers for 2 of them because I don't have enough black fabric to go around all of them. I can do I did both the big panels, and I'll have enough for 4 of the 6 2x2 panels. So maybe I'll put a logo on one of those, a couple of AVRant logos on them or something.
Sure.
Like picture of Rob. Picture of Rob on it. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to www.avrant.com. Leave a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/C/AVRant to see the full 2-hour recording behind the scenes video of us doing this, and nothing else because we're not doing that other thing anymore. So for a while, Austin was doing chopping the videos, individual questions up and posting them online. It's a tedious and time consuming task that after the last podcast, Rob and I were talking about, I went back and looked at the views, and we're getting many more views on the 2-hour podcast one than we're getting on anything else. So I killed the rest of it. It's just too much work for Austin to do for not enough payout from where I'm sitting. So Austin's going to be back on getting the question list together and helping with that end of it, because that's a really time-consuming task as well, that if Austin doesn't do it, Rob does it. Mm-hmm. I mean, technically I could do it, but I could barely find time to make panels for my home theater, so having an awful hard time managing my time recently. I started saying the word time a lot. Anywho, so how did that go this week? Was Austin?
It was a big help. Yeah, I didn't have a ton of time, and we had a lot of questions, so it was a huge help having Austin dedicated back on the question list. So selfishly, that is what I will prefer going forward, and that's what we're going to do.
All right. Sounds good. Let me see. As I mentioned, you can contact us directly, Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. Mine's Tom at avrant.com. My handle is at avrant_Tom. I use it so much I can't remember it. Austin, our producer, he has his Twitter is at Austin, TEM Pont. He has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about soccer skills, specifically, ball handling and stuff like that. We watch movies, all about soccer, and not games, not teams. In fact, they had this. They disallowed. Is that what? I don't even know if that's the word. They disallowed talking about actual soccer matches.
Just the skills.
Because they were fighting so much. One guy quit. There was some broken equipment. after an Arsenal loss. I understand. I don't really know what an Arsenal is. I don't know if that's a thing or a person. Is it a team? Okay.
It's a team.
They were very upset. They were very upset about that. And yeah. And if you write them a question, they will answer on their the We Watch Movies podcast about soccer handling skills or whatever it is. But if you call it football, you will derail the entire podcast while they correct you as to why it shouldn't be called football.
All right.
It's a very strange podcast. They're very passionate though about soccer, balls handling. We watch movies. All right. I want to thank our listeners for the week. Last week we had Bill, but this week we've got Nate, Daniel, and David. They all went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There they were able to give us a PayPal donation, which we will use to help pay for our hosting fees and everything else. We want to thank Nate, David, and Daniel.
Yeah, Nate, Daniel, David, thank you so much for those donations. We appreciate it.
We also want to thank our patrons from Patreon. If you don't know what that is, it's sort of a monthly subscription where you can support us, and it automatically takes money out of your whatever account you attach to it once a month, whatever a dollar amount you assign. I think the lowest dollar amount is $1, which we would be giving us $12 a year. I mean, I think that's the math.
That's correct.
I think that's how it works out.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have 30 patrons, up from 28 of last week. So we want to thank all of them, especially Kyle, who let us know that he is one of our patrons. So thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, we haven't figured out how to see people's names if you are a patron. I've seen other Patreon people put up donors' names, so apparently there's some way to do it, but we're not smart enough to figure it out. So yeah, if you let us know, we'll thank you by name. Kyle, thank you very much for being a patron, and to all the other 29 patrons, thank you so much. It's very cool to see that number keep going up.
I am definitely smart enough to figure it out. I am not motivated enough to figure it out right now, but it's not because I don't love our patrons. I do.
Oh yes.
It becomes another thing to do that I will not be able to keep up with. Oh man, I was going to remind you of something. I don't remember what it was. It'll come back to me. All right, James bought a lot of people can support the podcast financially, but a lot of people can't. So if you can't, find another way to support us and let us know. And James did that by buying an SVS PC2000, which is a subwoofer that he bought from SVS, one of our favorites. But he returned it and replaced it with an SB16 Ultra, which is a smaller but more powerful sub. I don't know how small it is. It's pretty big still. Anyways, he mentioned us directly to Gary Yakubian, who is the CEO of president, or whatever he is, of SVS, and was impressed that the president of the company responds to emails directly himself. So James supported us in that way. Josh let Mark over Accessories for Less know that he learned about them from us. He also brought a Marantz AV8802A Pre-Pro, second purchase for him. And David talked us up to the HT Market while he was shopping for home theater seating. They didn't seem to know about us at all. So now they do.
Not terribly surprising.
Thank you, David.
They haven't sent a ton of people over to HT Market, but maybe that'll change. Well, James, Josh, David, congrats on your purchases, and thanks so much for talking us up to those retailers and manufacturers.
That's right. We in the news, we had our interview with Charlie Jones, the regional sales manager for Surge X. We did that this week, end of last week.
Yep.
And that interview went about 2 bajillion times better than I expected it to go. Yep. I got to be honest with you. I had very low expectations going into this. I had very low expectations. I didn't share that information with Rob. I just was like, just power through it, Tom. It'll be fine. I thought it was going to be either extremely boring or full of nonsense that I was going to have to not roll my eyes through. But it wasn't. He was great. His science was sound. And the only thing that you're going to notice from the podcast is that Rob and I are extremely quiet when he's talking. And the reason this is we were recording the video using Google Hangouts. And it was, if you make a sound during Google Hangouts, it goes back to you. Like the camera switches to you while he's talking.
Yeah.
So he's making jokes, which are, funny enough. I was laughing on the inside, but I was like, I'm not going to make a noise because I didn't want to make a noise, because if I make a noise, the camera comes to me. So I didn't warn him about that beforehand, but afterwards, I'm like, Charlie, dude, I am so sorry. I know it sounded like we weren't making any noise, but we couldn't make noise or it's going to screw up the video recording. So it was a very good interview.
Yeah.
And we have also scheduled our interview with Brent Butterworth for Thursday, November 9th. So you got questions for Brent, let us know, and we will get those on the question list.
Yeah, so a huge thanks to Charlie. It's a good interview. I think people will enjoy it. Surge X is, higher end power protection, but there's reason behind it. It's in short, non-sacrificial versus sacrificial. So it makes sense that something that is non-sacrificial might cost a little bit more and use different technologies. So that's a lot of what we talked about. And then excited to talk to Brent Butterworth next week. That'll be Thursday, November 9th. So send in any questions you have for Brent.
Right. So we've made the decision to... we already talked about that. All right. Hisense is launching their 100L8D 100-inch laser TV. So those of you that are looking for a flat panel that is this flat?
Well, there you go.
All right, let me keep reading. It's actually an ultra short throw 4K DLP projector mated with a Screen Innovations Black Diamond screen. 2 speakers are built into the projector, and it comes with a wireless subwoofer. Well, that sounds like hot garbage. Anyways, unlike most projectors, it has streaming services and a TV tuner built in. Now, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The price is $10 grand.
Yup.
So
but it's $10,000 for a 100-inch screen.
It's so much easier to get a 100-inch screen that doesn't involve. So you're paying somewhere in the vicinity of like $6,000 premium for those speakers and a
Well,
TV
a
tuner.
lot of it is the Screen Innovations Black Diamond screen. Those things are not cheap. That's an expensive screen, ambient light rejecting. But the nice thing is, since it's a laser light engine, you got 3,000 lumens of brightness, you got a 20,000 hour lifespan, and most importantly, being that this is a single chip DLP, the laser light engine actually allows it to do wide color gamut. The DLPs that are using the traditional color wheel, they can't do the wide color gamut because the filters in the color wheel aren't wide enough on the spectrum of color. You're still limited to Rec 709 so on those.
What
but
about
the lasers let you get wide.
Dolby Vision? Will this be able to be
no Dolby Vision?
Dolby Vision?
And there's some debate about whether it actually supports HDR10 or not, because back at CEDIA, or it might have been all the way back at CES at the beginning of the year, but Hisense showed 2 versions of this, a 100L8D, which is what they're announcing here for 10 grand, and back then they had a 100L10D for 13 grand, and that one, at the time, they said the $13,000 one definitely does HDR10, whereas the $10,000 one doesn't. But now they've announced this one, and some places are saying it does HDR10 and other places are saying it doesn't, so not even totally sure on that.
Yeah, this seems whatever. All right, Dunkirk has a release date of December 19th on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and according to the images on the back of the packaging, they'll be adhering to Christopher Nolan's wishes, which is no immersive audio. It's going to be 5.1 DTS HDMA only. DTS high definition master audio, which was his HDMA means, and switching aspect ratio. So there'll be 2.2 to 1 for the 70 millimeter portions and 16:9 for the IMAX portions. So, yay!
So I have another example of a movie of explaining why, when we're telling people to get a projection screen, I'm still often in favor of getting a 16:9 projection screen, a really big one that's as wide as you want it to be for CinemaScope, but then taller, versus, it's popular to say get a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio screen because so many movies are in CinemaScope, but then I'm like, what about The Dark Knight? What about now Dunkirk, where it goes from being CinemaScope wide to being taller for IMAX?
2 movies.
Christopher Nolan single-handedly making my
movies.
argument for me. There you go.
That is a ridiculous argument to make. It's 2 movies.
But you still recommend getting a 16:9 screen anyway, so we end up in agreement.
I do, because I think it's just dumb not to get a 16:9 screen, but that's just me. I say either get, but this is, then what you the masking? If you had the masking, if you had one of those, you had a 16:9 that you drop a 2.35 to 1. You couldn't even do that in this movie. Like, I'm sorry, honey, I have to press pause. We gotta switch the screens. What do you mean you gotta switch the screens?
No, you're gonna want to leave it as a 16:9 screen throughout this movie and just live with the black bars during the 2.2 to 1.
Which is
portions.
this is what I always say. Anyways, Jeremy wanted to let us know his final decision on upgrading his Marantz AV7702 Mark II and his 3 Emotiva amplifiers. He sold the X6400H that he had found at Best Buy. He also sold his AV7702 Mark II. He was going to order the X4300H, but he wound up getting a killer deal on a brand new Marantz AV7704. This dude finds deals.
Yup.
What's up with that? So he's sticking with the pre-pro and 11 channels of external amplifications. Well, I'm glad we can be able to
There
help.
you go.
He still wanted to streamline his setup, so he got an this guy's got money, like burning a hole in his pocket. And he got an Emotiva XPA 11 Gen 3. Now he's in the process of selling all 3 of his Emotiva Gen 1, amps. He's very happy with this new setup, and as an added bonus, his HDMI switching is faster, and Dolby Digital Plus bit streaming, including Atmos from Voodoo, is working via ARC for him now, whereas it never worked properly with his AV7702 Mark II. Dude, I should try that. I haven't plugged into Voodoo in a while. I still need to get some extra speakers. My wife's going to kill me. She's like, when's the home theater going to be done? I'm like, I don't know.
Never. It's always ongoing.
I got a blister, man, like right here from the stupid staple gun. I kind of pinched myself. It hurts like crazy. Anyways, his wire management is way better than mine. You can see from these images. Are you showing the images?
I already showed them.
Whatever. Nick heard me talk about how he might go back to having a disc by mail subscription so they can get certain movies that aren't available on Netflix. Nick just wanted to mention that he's been very impressed with Roku's universal search functionality. Type in any movie title and it will search across multiple streaming services. So Netflix streaming might not have it, but another service might. And if it does, Roku will find it. That's a good point. I'm not going to say it's not a good point. Jeff says, mission accomplished. Jeff was a fellow who had his top middle speakers about 10 feet apart overhead and was experiencing a lack of directly overhead sensation. We talked about angling them or moving them, but either way, he's going to have to venture into the attic and remount them in some way. He decided to move them, but thanks to the Sand Acoustics HTM 200 SE mounting screws being off-center, he managed a better position than he had anticipated due to the diffusion panels being placed on his ceiling that he didn't want to have to move. So we wound up getting his top middles about 6 feet apart and moved slightly back so they're actually right in line with his surround speakers. He reran Odyssey, and now he gets a seamless pan from left to right going overhead. And he even gets a convincing phantom image directly above him, so he's very happy with the results. And now he's done moving overhead speakers. So
congrats, Jeff. I'm really happy to hear that outcome. He also wanted to mention he took the advice that I often give of using a boom microphone stand to hold the Odyssey microphone, because previously he was using just a straight up tripod and just putting that in the seat. But he's like, oh yeah, if you have one with a boom stand that you can sort of swing, it made the Odyssey process a little bit easier. So all good stuff, and congrats to Jeff.
Yeah. So Joseph suggests using free NAS for your network storage is especially useful if you happen to have an older computer lying around that you could repurpose as a network storage unit. What is free NAS?
It's software. It's open source software where you can basically use any processor that you might have and then hard drives attached to that processor, but it'll turn it into a network attached storage unit. So instead of going out and buying a bespoke unit from Synology or Drobo or something like that, I do like this. If you like, a lot of us have an older desktop or something, or an older laptop kind of lying around that we're not using anymore. It's might not be powerful enough to run all the software we want today, but it's powerful enough to manage a few hard drives and put them on your network, so you can repurpose an old computer with free open source network attached storage software. That's a good suggestion. I like that, Joseph.
All right. Lastly, regarding Patrick, who wants wireless Bluetooth open-back headphones, we talked about him last week, and I think the week before that. Jim owns the Sennheiser RS120s that Rob mentioned, and he gives them a thumbs up for their wireless range and sound quality. And Nathan suggested the Apple AirPods. Those little weird things.
I mean, they are the ear pods, but wireless and Bluetooth. And as I hate whenever you're out in the world and people are using Apple's things, you can totally hear whatever they're listening to because they're completely open, which means you can also hear the world coming in. I didn't think about the Apple AirPods.
I didn't think about those either.
Yeah, most people describe them because they are earbuds. They're not in-ear monitors. They're earbuds. And most people do say, out of earbuds, they're one of the better earbuds. They're still terrible, but they're one of the better earbuds. So I can't wholeheartedly recommend them because I'm assuming Patrick still wants good sound.
How much do those things cost? They're probably like $60, right?
Oh no, they're kind of expensive, I think. I'll have to
Oh,
look it up.
Jesus.
Yeah. But they are a wireless Bluetooth open
But
solution.
he wanted something that sounded good, right?
Well, I would assume who doesn't want something that sounds good.
Everybody that owns an Apple earbud. That's who. Which is like so many people.
Oh, stupid
many.
being in Canada. What's the American price?
Anyhow, I am in the process of reviewing a Thiel Audio Bluetooth speaker. If you're not familiar with Thiel,
Okay.
they are extremely expensive like really expensive speakers.
Yeah.
But they were one of the products that this is the box. What's in the box? Did I tell you about the box?
No.
I got a box right before Irma.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
that
you
I
mentioned
had.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, what's in the box? Well, I opened the box the other night and went through it, and it's Thiel Audio. There's this wireless, there's two of them, and they're Play-Fi, and they're like Spotify Stream or something, Spotify something. I don't use Spotify anymore because it irritates me, but I set them up with Play-Fi, worked really well. There's a tall, thin one that kind of looks like about 2 feet of a 4x4 post that had been cut off and then wrapped in stuff. Anyways, there's that one's the smaller one, and there's a big one. So I'm still doing the review, but the early thing is the big one sounds really good.
Okay.
The small one, whenever you connect it to Wi-Fi, buzzes.
Ah.
But if you connect to it via Bluetooth, it's fine. But the difference in sound quality between the two of those things is like don't even buy the small one. The big one's the only one you want.
Okay.
The big one's really, really good. But the big one's big. It's like really big. But anyways, we're going to talk about that next week. That's going to be reviewed next week, so look for that. Let's get into these questions here. I'm sitting on my foot, so I'm going to have to adjust pretty soon once I deal with that. I'm a man of habits and apparently inability to change my stupid things I do. Bobby has decided that what he really wants for his dedicated theater room are dual SVS PB1000 subwoofers, but he can't afford to buy them right away. He has surround sound in his living room and also his family room. Both of those rooms use an Onkyo 7.1 speakers package that includes the SKW204 10-inch subwoofer.
Mm-hmm.
204.
That's one that I've actually liked as far as home theater in a box style speaker packages go. I think that was one of the better offerings. Are you there?
Nope. You just every time you speak, you turn robot, and I can't understand anything you're saying. So it's sort of like talking to my 14-year-old child. It's just like talking to like that. I just kind of nod until he stops talking, and I go on with what I was going to say. So, anyways, he asked, could he use those two Onkyo subwoofers in his dedicated theater until he saved up enough for the dual PB1000s? Yeah, I mean, you could. Well, why not?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you've already got them on hand, obviously in your living room and your family room, you'll be living without a subwoofer for a while in those two places. But yeah, I see no reason why you couldn't throw them into the theater and at least have, won't be getting down to 20 hertz. It might not be fully pressurizing your room, even though it's a small theater. This is his 12 by 12 theater that he's setting up.
Right.
But it'll certainly fill in more of the bottom end than just the bookshelf and satellite clip speakers that he's going to be using.
So I'm guessing it's like a 10-inch woofer with like maybe 150 watt.
About 150 watt, yeah.
Maybe.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Those should be fine. I mean,
Absolutely.
it'd be nice. It'd be nice. You know what? I would even recommend it. I'd recommend it because you could live with those things for a while and then be impressed with how good the SVSs sound afterwards.
Yeah.
And
you'll get used to
the difference will be noticing.
Setup process of the dual subwoofers diagonally opposite corners and getting uniform bass across your whole seating area. Yeah.
So he says he could pick up a pair of inexpensive subs like the Bic F12s or the Polk PSW10s. Would either of these be better stopgap than pilfering the Onkyo subs from his other two rooms? Dude, don't spend any money on subs that you don't really want. Don't do that because that's just going to make it longer for you to get the SVSs.
That's right.
Just save all that money for the SVSs.
Yeah, and once you get the dual PB1000s, you'll put the Onkyo subs back into the living room and family room respectively. There's no reason to get inexpensive subs that aren't what you want. This is a temporary thing. So yeah, don't spend any money right now.
So he says, regardless of which subs he uses in his dedicated theater, should he just put them in the opposite corners, or should he worry about trying to find an even better placement before he gets the dual PB1000s? Is it worth his time and effort, or should he just not worry about it until he has the SVS subs? You shouldn't worry about it at all. The best place for these things are opposite walls facing each other, midpoint of opposite walls. Second best place, opposite corners. Third best place, anything mirrored in your room.
Right.
So if you can put them in opposite corners, it doesn't make any difference if it's SVS or the other ones. Just put them in opposite corners and you're done.
Yep. Yeah. Especially in a very rectangular room, almost square. It's not exactly 12 by 12.
No, it's not 12 foot tall for sure.
But it is a rectangular room for sure. There's not really much reason to move them from there. That's where they go. That's
right. Matt says he's been a loyal listener for a couple of years now, and he wound up getting a rhythmic subwoofer and a Denon AVRX 4300H because of us. He loves them, so he says that's much appreciated. You're welcome. He's been using the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers. He came across some older, used Imperial Intimus series speakers, the 533 models from about 10 years ago. Not the current models, obviously. They're in pristine condition, so he gave just the center a try in place of his Pioneer center, and he thought the Empyrean sounded much better. He has the option of getting the matching Empyrean towers. He'd replace the Pioneer towers if he bought them. He'd be spending about $200. Is a worthwhile upgrade. Well, you like the center better than you like the other center. I would say $200 sounds like a pretty good deal for 2 tower speakers, as long as there's in great condition. Check out the surrounds on the woofers. Check out the dust caps. Check out the woofers themselves. Make sure that there's nothing torn or looks like it might break at some point. Any sort of cracking in the rubber surrounds. I'd go for it if I were you.
Yeah, I think this would be a worthwhile upgrade. The price is nice. You already heard at least the difference. Now, I will say you're probably going to notice a difference in the center more than anything else because so much important content comes out of the center. It's pretty much all the dialogue in most movies and TV shows. And if you are using upmixing for music, then, anything that is centered in the mix is going to be coming out of the center. So it's very, very noticeable when you change your center speaker. So you might not notice that same level of difference all the time, but your front, left, right speakers handle a lot of content in movies, television, and in music. So if you heard a very worthwhile difference between the centers, you should expect a similar difference in the towers. I think that's a great idea, a great way to go. The Empyrean speakers have always been really good. So
yeah. Bill thanks us for all the help we've been so far, but as he had sworn to us, he has more questions. All right, that was a lot of words that started with H.
There was an extra he in there, so there we go.
There was. I think that was as he warned us, whatever. He'd like to first clear up his budget situation, though. Yes, he's building a custom house with a dedicated theater, but it will be a humble by custom house standards. At least in his area, and it'll be a downsize from the current house. In fact, they first thought of foregoing a dedicated theater altogether, but then they came to their senses. No, they decided to nix the pool and put the money toward a theater instead. You will use the theater a lot more and use that pool. Yeah. So just understand that he's a cheapskate who likes to save money every chance he gets. Okay, that's fine. I'm down with that, dude. That's me too. Yeah. I am 100% there. Listen, I cannot buy like regular grocery store chicken. I can't do it because I can go to Sam's and get chicken breast for like $1.80 something a pound. You can't pay $4 a pound at the supermarket when you could drive 3 miles down the street and get the same thing. I'm sorry. I don't care how many hormones it doesn't have. I'll give me all the hormones because it's $1.87. Although they won't be breaking ground for a couple of months, he still needs a budget for all the equipment now, so he wants to roll it into the total cost of the build. All that being said, he loved our suggestion for the 17 by 23 by 11 foot room size. It'll be adding about 76 square feet, not even including the higher ceiling, and he'd have to talk to the contractor about it, but it should be totally doable since he won't have the square. He's going to talk to a contractor. I totally thought this guy was going to be out there with a hammer and doing it himself. And you say to yourself, right, all you people listening, you're like, Tom, you're an idiot. There's a guy down the street from me, built the house himself. I drove by him. It's on the way between my parents' house and my house. It is a 1 mile straight shot down one street. I drove by his house. 20 times a week minimum, because my parents had just moved here and I was going back and forth all the time. The dude was always working out there, built the thing top to bottom. The only thing he had help with was, I think, painting the outside.
Oh.
And maybe I think laying the foundation.
Yeah, I was thinking, pouring the foundation is usually a specialty job for you bring other people in to do that.
But I mean, he did everything himself. It was crazy. So, all right. Anyways, since you won't have the square footage to spare on the lobby, on the full on lobby idea is out. Okay, so that's not gonna happen. Although he does like that idea. He might find a space for a swollen hallway or something. That sounds like you should have it lanced. Also, they don't drink, so no need to leave space for a bar. Do you all have any friends that drink? The gear. I would like a drink when I come over to your house. The gear closet with a window for source device visibility within the theater can use some of the space, maybe. Okay, whatever. So about the drop ceiling, are we talking about the same kind used in commercial buildings? What are the benefits? And if it's just for access purposes, we should know that this is going to be a single-story home, so no basement. So since he'll have very good access to the climate-controlled attic above his theater, does this negate most of the reason to have a drop ceiling? Not really, because with the drop ceiling, you have the ability to basically get. I mean, I know you're gonna have a climate-controlled attic. It's still an attic. With the drop ceiling, you can just put absorption up there. You can put tiles in it that are diffusion tiles. You can switch around the placement of your speakers very easily without having. I mean, literally, you mount the speaker to the tile. You're like, I don't like where it is. You pick the tile up. You'll move it to the next little thing. You know, you can move it around. That's how easy it can be.
Yeah, let's define what it is first, because he just wanted to make sure. And yes, it is. Okay. It's like, go to any commercial office building, and they have that drop tile ceiling. It's the metal bars in a grid that are holding ceiling tiles. That is what we're talking about. If you go to most Cineplex movie theaters and you look up at their ceiling, you're going to see metal grid with usually black ceiling tiles up there. So what I was saying is, if you just go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, they're going to have T-bar ceilings. They're going to have drop ceilings. But very often the ceiling tiles that they have for those are really, really thin, sometimes exceedingly thin, that are just meant to go in a very cheap basement type thing just to have some covering over the floor joists that are above. You can get, though, actual acoustic ceiling tiles. A good place, you don't necessarily buy from here, but a good example, if you go to acousticsolutions.com, they have their acoustic ceiling tiles, and you'll notice they're 1 or 2 inches thick, fiberglass or foam, and then they have some nice ones that actually have like a vinyl backing. So that gets you like all the things you would want for soundproofing, which is you've got some mass in the form of that vinyl, you've got the fiberglass there for absorption, it is by its nature decoupled from the surface above, and then you could have insulation placed above that ceiling tile, and now you've hit all 4 ways of soundproofing. So, I mean, I will say, since I was in my head thinking basement originally when he first wrote to us, in which case drop ceiling is kind of really important, because a lot of times you don't have any other access. You're not going to go down through the upstairs floor to access your ceiling, so drop ceiling in a basement makes a ton of sense. In this case, you have access to the attic, which means you could do all the things that you want to do with any ceiling, but it's so much more convenient with a drop ceiling, because he wants soundproofing. And he already talked about in the last theater that he built, he's like, I made a shell of the room that's all sealed up, and then he put in columns and ran all his wires through the columns so that he wouldn't have to poke big holes in the soundproof shell of the room that he built. You want to do the same thing here, including the ceiling that's separating this room from the attic, and then you don't have to put big holes for your can lighting, for your in-ceiling speakers, for your air ducts, for all that stuff. You don't have to put the big holes into your shell ceiling, your drywall ceiling. You put them into this drop ceiling just below that. So it's still much more convenient and much better for your soundproofing. And then you don't have to build the super robust drywall ceiling. You could go ahead and get away with a single layer of drywall on the actual ceiling joists, and then have this drop ceiling right below it, which is going to be more cost effective, easier for your builder, and you don't have all the big holes in the drywall, so you don't have to worry about it. So I still think it's worth doing.
So the downside here that I'm anticipating is that he's going to look at this thing and say, I don't want an ugly drop ceiling.
The look of it, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
They can look really nice.
That's what I'm saying. So, when you're doing your research, try not to envision like every drop ceiling you've ever seen at like a supermarket or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the stucco-looking white with the little black speckles or the little holes in it. It doesn't have to be that. You can get fabric-covered ones. You can get ones that have lights built in. Like there's if you check out Acoustical Solutions, there's a ton of really cool looking stuff that you can do with it. So,
so just don't let your preconceived notions of what these things look like cloud your judgment is all I'm saying. So he says on control, he's always used Insteon for lighting and more recently Harmony Hub for the theater equipment control. But since he's looking at a whole home control system for this new house, should be looking at new options to control the theater as well. He's very hands-on, even installed a custom control system himself in his first theater before Harmony existed. So he doesn't want to hand over control to Crestron or Control 4, and he has plans to maybe use Amazon's voice assistant for voice control of things like Insteon scenes and on-off of theater gear and all that. But should he be looking at things like a Samsung Smart Things Hub or Wink Hub, other options? I'm not super down with all these options, but the last time we had a serious discussion about this on the after party, every time we do a podcast, we usually host an after party on Google. You have to follow us on Facebook. It gets posted over there. I think Rob posts it on his Twitter account as well.
Yes.
And you can just come ask us questions. We've had some serious DIY guys. There's Z-Wave out there. There's all these different solutions that you can do in your home if you're like if then this or whatever.
If this then that. Yeah.
Exactly. All these other things.
Although Stringify, I think, if I was hearing the guys correctly over on the DMZ Digital Media Zone, I think Stringify got bought up by somebody and people are fearing it might be going away.
Yeah. So the danger of doing it yourself is that the tools you're using to do it yourself, as Rob just mentioned, can get purchased and then rolled into another product and then they stop being supported for you. Okay. But if you're not afraid of any of that, there are quite a few options out there for you. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you wanted a whole home control system, you didn't have a control choice. It was Crestron or
AMX.
Control 4 wasn't even around then.
Or
Control
Savant,
4
which is around now.
Savant, I remember when Savant first came out, and they were like, I'm like, what are you guys? Because all they had was like this big table with, like a panel on it that it was a big touch screen. And, I think this is even before smartphones were really a thing, and or that much of a thing. And I'm telling you, man, there's tons of stuff out there.
Yeah, I have to say, you can do a lot more with the Harmony Hub system now than people are even aware of, I think.
I think that's true too.
They've greatly expanded what it can do in the way of home automation, and they have a companion hub, not the Harmony Hub, but a companion hub that connects to the Harmony Hub that lets it control Insteon and Z-Wave. So if you want to stick with Insteon, one thing I like about Insteon is that in many respects, it's more secure because it doesn't connect to just your regular Wi-Fi network. It's actually a wired system plus its own ad hoc wireless. So if you're worried about security, because we just had this whole, Wi-Fi scare with basically anything using WPA2 having a vulnerability, right? If you're worried about just connecting everything to your regular Wi-Fi router, Insteon is still kind of nicer, but then you're limited to only Insteon products, of course. But the thing is, if you go Harmony Hub as sort of your primary control, that's your interface. Let's call Harmony Hub your interface. If you go with that and you get that companion hub, you can mix Insteon and Z-Wave. And once you do that, Z-Wave is nearly endless in its offerings. So
now the only thing I'll say, if you do want to like roll in, Alexa or whatever else you want to do, sometimes that's where it gets clunky.
Except
that right there.
Amazon's voice assistant works with Harmony now, like directly.
Yes,
so
yes, it does. technically, but it's still, sometimes it depends. The last time I used it, it was tell Harmony to change the channel to this, so it was, you had to like almost learn a new language basically to speak to it. It wasn't quite as intuitive as it could be. We'll see if it's any better. I still can't get mine to connect to the Ecobee correctly. It never seems to know what temperature it is anywhere in my house, and it's certainly, I have gotten it to tell me what temperature it is. I've never got it to change the temperature. Now, understand, it is probably, like as the bird flies 5 feet away from my thermostat, but I have to walk around the corner, so it's probably like 7.5 feet for me. So I'll try it twice before I give up and just walk over there and change the temperatures.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not going to be as slick and fully single integrated as something like a Crestron or Control 4, but those you do basically have to hire someone else to handle it for you. If you're this hands-on type of person, yes, it's going to be some hassle and some learning as you do it, but I have to at least suggest that you really look into what Harmony Hub can do now, because it's a lot more than people expect. I heard the HT guys recently just, on their last podcast talking about how they'd probably go Z-Wave now, which I agree with. I think it makes a lot of sense because they have such a selection, but they were saying, oh, Harmony kind of fell off and doesn't do that. And I'm like, what? You guys really have not kept up in that case, because they've only expanded greatly the capabilities there. So for an interface where you want to control your equipment, I think Harmony Hub is still a great way to go for DIY.
So for subs, he knows 4 would be better than 2. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, technically true. I don't think the laws of diminishing returns comes in pretty quickly between 2 and 4 subs. But it's unlikely that it's in the budget for him anyway. So he'll still wire for 4 just in case he adds more in the future. But for now, what pair of subs should he get? HSU and SVS seem like top choices, but which models? Would a pair of PB 2000s be enough for his room? A pair of PC 12 Pluses? Other models? PC 12 Pluses, do those still exist? I don't think those exist.
Oh yeah, PC 12 Pluses still exist, sure.
PC 12
the cylinder Pluses? Absolutely.
I thought, so what's the entry level? The 2000 is the entry level?
No, 1000s are the entry level, and there is no cylinder in the 1000s.
That's what I'm saying. So the PC 2000, the 12 Plus is the entry level?
No. There's the 1000, 2000 plus Ultra. That's the order.
No, I know that. I'm saying the PC, the ported cylinder, plus, is that still a thing? I thought so. That's above the 2000.
It's above the 2000. It's in between the 2000 and the Ultra.
Okay, that's where I was, because I thought that
what they don't have is a sealed box 12 Plus.
No.
They don't have an SB 12 Plus. You jump from the SB 2000 to the SB 13 Ultra. There's no SB 12 Plus in between there. But they have a PB 12 Plus and a PC 12 Plus.
All right, so his room is what? We said it was 23 by 11
23 by 11 by 17, which means you're not quite 4,500 cubic feet. That's a little large for 2000s. It's a little large for 2000s.
I don't know. Well, I mean, I'll tell you what. I don't think it's a little. I mean, I think you would be just fine with the 2000s. They might have to play pretty loud. They might have to play pretty loud, but you'd be okay. What I am thinking that they are is you are going to end up having a lot of absorption in this room.
Yeah.
And it's going to make your subs work a little bit harder than they normally would in a room this size. So for that reason, I would say, yes, you could bump up to the next one. But if you were in a normal room that had very little absorption in it, the 2000s, I think, would be just fine. Because this is a big room, but it's not humongous.
No,
it's not
but I mean, this is, you want to do this up right. I'm thinking you want, if you were in the SVS lineup, you would want plus level output, but to keep the price down, because he's like, hey, if I can save money where I can save it and still get great performance, I want to do that. HSU is really high value, and if you went with their VTF 3 Mark V HPs, which are a 15-inch driver in a big box, so don't make any mistake about the size of this box, but the price there, really attractive to get that extra bit of output versus the 2000 series. They do have the VTF 15H, which is even more, but you don't need that. That's getting up into Ultra and actually even a little bit more than Ultra series output in the SVS lineup. But the VTF 3 Mark V HP matches up really nicely output-wise with the Plus series from SVS. So value for dollar, that is where I would point you. A pair of those VTF3 Mark V HPs is a really high value.
PC 12s are more than 1550 a pop.
Not each, but this is duals.
Oh, these are. Am I looking at duals right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dual drive package. Is that what that means?
Yeah, dual drive package is $1,550 for 2 of the HSU VTF3 Mark V HPs, which is less than dual Plus series models.
I would highly recommend you build that box.
Yeah,
cardboard.
Build yourself a model,
because
a cardboard model.
This is going to be a much bigger subwoofer than your. I mean, I look at the picture and I'm like, that looks so bad. That's a 15-inch driver.
15-inch driver, yeah. They're
that
big.
Is a big driver. Yeah. That is a large subwoofer. So I'm looking for the actual.
Yeah. So if you want the cylinder form factor, I would nudge you towards the Plus series. That'll be absolutely fantastic in this room size, even with all the absorption. I would have no qualms about the Plus series. No need to go to the Ultra series. But yeah, that'd be my suggestion.
The box is 25 inches high, 17.25 inches wide, and 23.5 inches deep.
Yeah.
That's pretty big. That's bigger than you think it's going to be. So build a box if you're going to do this, and then probably end up with the cylinders. Speakers, he would like to keep the price to $500 or so per speaker, at least the mains and center. But since it's a somewhat larger room, we said he probably needs towers for output, right? Could we help him better understand how output differences work between towers and bookshelf speakers? Since he's seen some towers with, say, 86 dB sensitivity, while some bookshelves like Klipsch might have 96 dB sensitivity. Wouldn't the bookshelves be better for him in a case like that? Well, I mean, it depends on where you're going to sit in the room, too. I mean, that's what it really comes down to for your main speakers. If you're going to be sitting in the front third of the room because you want to sit close to the screen, you want the screen to be a certain size and blah, 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 and you want to put, 3-4 rows of seats or something like that in there, you may not need such big. Yeah. And if you've got towers that are 86 dB efficient, they're going to require a lot more power to drive, and in which case we'd be pushing you towards an external amplification. But the idea of the towers is that they are just physically, because of all the drivers that are in them and the internal volume of the box, which some towers, we can talk about this in a second, but some towers are misleading in that way. They just can literally output more sound.
Well, there's
the mid-range and the bass.
2 parts of it. There's the sensitivity, which is how many decibels per watt, but then there's the power handling, which is how many watts can you put into this thing before it starts to overheat. So a good example is like you'll find, say, the SVS Ultra towers, right? They can absorb up to 800 watts. That's a peak, but 800 watts, that's their power handling. Whereas if you looked at, say, the Power Sound Audio, their smallest model that they produce, it's like 97 dB efficient, but the maximum power you can put into it is 150 watts peak.
Right.
So you can put many more watts into a speaker that has, typically one that has, many more drivers. I mean, it all depends on the design. There absolutely are smaller speakers that are super duper efficient, that have pretty good power handling too, like JTR speakers, while not small by any means, are 2 drivers that are very efficient and can handle a crazy amount of wattage, which means you could put them outdoors and be 45 feet away from them and hit full reference volume. That's what they're for. It isn't as simple as towers versus bookshelves, but why could a less efficient speaker still ultimately play louder? Because maybe it can handle a lot more power. That's how to understand and sort of square that in your mind.
All right. So yeah, we can never just look at the form factor of a speaker and know something about it. Perfect example. There have been more than a lot of speakers that have hit the market that are form factor towers, but you'll see them, right? They'll have like the at the very bottom on the back of the speaker, they'll have the terminals, right? And then behind they'll have like a woofer, a tweeter, and a woofer, and then behind the bottom woofer there'll be a port.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but many times that's because that's where the speaker actually ends.
Yeah, there's a barrier inside the cabinet that you can't see, but it's cutting off those two.
The bottom of that, below that, just below that is nothing but dead air. There's nothing in there. It's
essentially
a stand. You bought a
yeah.
stand.
Yeah.
And they're not using the inside of that box at all. Is that a problem? Not really. It's a design choice. They're giving you what you want, which is a tower speaker, and they're building a speaker that they know will sound good with the parameters that they're designing. It's fine. It's sort of misleading because you think you're getting a tower speaker that's doing all this stuff, but you can't just look at a speaker and know something about it, not just from the outside. So he says the SVS Prime towers would fit his budget, and the CAF Q700s, Q900s, and Focal Chorus 615s all fit the price point if you bought them from Accessories for Less. Are they or others better choices? He's coming from Polk's, the RTI speaker, so probably won't take much to sound like an upgrade. Mm-hmm. As for surrounds and Atmos, we often talk about the Focal Birds for Atmos placement, but what about surrounds to match whatever we decided for his mains?
I know what I'm going to point you toward.
Yeah, the Prime Towers would be okay, I think. I like CAFs. Mm-hmm. I like CAFs. I don't necessarily think they're going to be the best choice for you. As far as, like, in my room, they, crossing them over, even at 80 hertz, they were constantly trying to play lower, which means, there's no internal limiting in them that there should be, I think, to stop them from, I think I had the Q700s, I think. Yep. That's what I had in here.
Sounds right.
And, so I would be afraid that they would have the potential to add noise to your room.
Because you're going to be asking them to play pretty loud in your setup.
The Veris, my speakers would probably be decent.
That's
I don't
over
know
this price point. Though. Yeah, you'd be more in the. If you went AVRant, you'd be in the Intimus series, which I think would be a fine choice. The SVS Primes, the AVRant Intimus, the NHT. Well, NHT doesn't really have a really good mid-tier anymore. I like their Super Series for the small. Yep. I like their C Series for the top. They do have a middle series, their Media Series, that I'm not too hyped on right now. So, unfortunately, I like their entry and their top. But I'm going to point you to Ascend Acoustics because they have speakers that fit your needs and your budget so well. I mean, they really do. Because, his front three speakers are all going to be behind his acoustically transparent screen. So the CMT 340s, they're not lookers, but they're right in this price point. They are nicely efficient at, they say 92 in room, 90 anechoic. I say just call them 90, and then they can handle 400 watts. Which means if you have that 18-foot seating distance in your second row that we talked about previously, they can hit full reference volume. They can do it. Without having to up the price, and the sound quality is really nice. And then you were asking what should you do for your surrounds and your overheads. They're HTM 200 SEs, sealed speakers, dual 4-inch drivers. You can mount them on the walls. You can, if you have that drop ceiling, you can secure them to the actual physical ceiling and then just have a cutout in your drop ceiling. Maybe put a little border around it and have the HTM 200 SEs right in there. Another nice reason for that drop ceiling, you don't have to worry about it must be an in-ceiling speaker rated for that's going to go protrude into your attic. It's not. It's going to be below the drywall and protruding through the drop ceiling if you do it this way. Those can handle 400 watts. They're not as efficient as the CMT 340s, but they can handle a ton of power. I say that fits your budget. Yep, it fits your looks, and then I would suggest you get a 5-channel monolith amplifier so that you have all the power you need for your front three, and he's going to have 2 surround speakers on his left, 2 surround speakers on his right, so you wire each of those channels, 2 speakers per channel for your surround channels, to the other 2 outputs of your monolith amplifier, and man, that is singing. That is such a good sounding system, so that's where I'm pointing you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. $500 a speaker. That's a very competitive price point, but in his room, it's hard to come by. Is EMP Text is no more, right? They don't exist.
EMP Tech is gone. They've been rolled back into RBH.
And what about the Impression series? They can handle a lot of power, right?
Oh yeah, they can handle a ton of power. Yeah. But we don't know what's happening with this second generation thing.
We're kind of waiting on that too. So I would keep an eye on that as well.
Yep.
I'm trying to think, does RBH have any speakers that are not the Impression Series speakers that would fit this bill?
Not right now. Their lineup is really, really shrunk.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. All right, we'll think about it. You got some time. In this next question, we're going to talk more about that. Since he has already sold his house and is living in another home temporarily during the build of his new home, he doesn't really have anywhere decent to audition speakers. Probably the best place in his house now is the bedroom because at least there's some absorption, but it's irregular and doesn't have his subwoofers anymore, and it won't resemble a theater space at all. So, should he be limiting his options to what's available in local stores? Also, as he won't actually need the speakers for another 8 months or so, it would seem weird to buy them now, audition them, and then store them until the house is built. So you just budget the cost now and do the actual choosing later. Any other thoughts? Yes, you should save the money. You should wait till you get the theater, and then you should build it. You should get the speakers then. 100% absolutely. You could buy the amps. I mean, it's weird to buy everything now anyways, to be honest with you.
But budgeting for it now makes sense.
We're going to be budgeting for it is fine.
Yeah.
But buying the gear, buying the receiver, buying the amplifier is probably arguably the only thing I could say that you could buy now. I'd be like 100% behind, but because they don't change that much. But there could be something new in 8 months that we were like really hot on, and you could be really hot on it too. So I wouldn't buy anything now. I would shop. I would have a running list of things I would like to test in my new home theater. I get the home theater built. Mostly, as much as you can, and then audition some speakers, audition some mains until you find the ones that you like, and then Bob's your uncle. It's
Agreed.
almost useless to do them in this bedroom because what's going to sound good in this bedroom? And this has happened. Perfect example. Jay Clark, when we did the shootout years ago, he absolutely loved the Dolly speakers in his home theater. He listened to them in my home theater, thought they sounded like hot garbage. Once he found out, because we did it all blind. Once he found out that he was listening to Dolly's and he didn't like them, he convinced himself he liked them again. But during the blind test, he didn't like them as much because they sounded weird, and they also sounded. I thought they said. I don't remember if we listened to him in Gene's house or not. So I know that between the two places, he had a completely different experience with them. So wait till you get into your actual cinema before you start auditioning things. So the screen. After some research, he's looking at Seymour AV for the screen. We've mentioned them a lot, but never much about which acoustically transparent material is a better choice. The Center Stage UF is supposed to look smoother than the Center Stage XD. Sometimes, I think he names these things just because they look like emojis. Chris does over there at Seymour AV. But attenuates the higher frequencies a bit more, 2.2 dB average above 2 kilohertz versus 1.4 dB average for the XD. And it also has a slightly lower gain. Given that they're the same price, which is the better choice? Should I keep reading this? Another possibility is a local company, Severed Sons Screens, that services mostly commercial theaters. They offer a woven screen as well as vinyl perforation, I guess, perf option. Have we ever heard of them or seen one of their screens in person? They have a good reputation, but they also seem to be more expensive than Seymour, or they are an option worth considering. If they're more expensive than Seymour, they better be damn good, because Seymour is like very good. Yeah. And Seymour is pretty pricey, but I have no problems recommending him because not only is his website hilarious, if you've ever been to the Seymour AV website, you have to look at the images because they look fine until you actually look at them and you're like, wait a second, that's just a big empty building. You're like, yeah, it's because it's one dude. It used to be, it's not anymore. But Chris, right? Isn't it Chris? Is that his name? Chris Seymour? That's right.
I think so. Yeah.
We used to play Rock Band online with him all the time. He's a real good guy, and his stuff is solid. So I have no problems recommending this. Now I don't know which one. I wouldn't worry too much about the gain. You're gonna have full light control in here.
I mean, he's going for if he's going with my advice, he's going with a 10-foot wide screen. And if he wants to do HDR, the gain does come into play. The main thing to know is if you're going to be sitting 10 feet or closer from eyes to screen, that's when you want that UF, so that you have the really fine weave and hardly any texture. The closest we were recommending you sit is 12 feet, So the center stage XD should be fine. You get the little bit extra gain. You get the less attenuation in the high frequencies of the sound. So I don't see any reason to not use the center stage XD. That is their primary screen surface that they recommend. They brought out the UF because there are people who are sitting only 8 feet away from the projection screens, and they're like, when I'm that close, I can start to see the weave in the XD. But at 12 feet, you won't. So I'd go with the center stage XD. And I have no experience with the Severtson screens. They might be excellent, but if they're more expensive than Seymour, I don't see any reason to do that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I try. I mean, if you call them, if they're local, you call them, talk to them, and try to have them convince you.
Sure.
But I mean, they'd have to really convince me. Honestly. Ken had. Notice he said had a pair of Belkin Pure AV surge protectors powering his home theater system. He had a power blip, and it seems they sacrificed themselves as they are completely dead now. Mm-hmm. He wants to replace them with battery backup APC units, but isn't sure exactly which models to get. So should he go for the back UPS Pro 1500 that offers voltage regulation? I thought it was a J series. Isn't the APC J series the ones that
is
have
what
the
I
batteries?
recommend? Yeah, when for home theater. So the back UPS Pro series are still primarily targeted at computer systems. And now,
yeah,
really nice unit, nice features. But what it doesn't have that the J series does have are a couple of outlets that are high current, allowing the full 15 amps through. Most of the APC back UPS units do limit the current to 12 amps per outlet, which when you're running lower power devices, which is all of your computer equipment, your routers, your hard drives, all that stuff, it's no big deal. They're not drawing that kind of current. It's no problem at all. But and I know that Ken mentioned some of the equipment he has. He's got some big amplifiers and big subwoofers and stuff like that. If you're going to be plugging those in, you want the current unlimited outlets that the J series does offer. So if you want the voltage regulation, that's the J35 that gives that. If you don't really care about having the voltage regulation, the J25 is less expensive. And then for your other sources that aren't as critical and aren't going to be drawing a ton of current, in order to keep the price down, because he needs quite a few outlets, and the J35 and J25, they both offer 8 outlets, 6 of them battery protected, 2 of them not. If all you need are extra outlets, some of them battery protected, I'd go to just their regular back UPS units. The BE850 right now is a really nice unit that gives you 9 outlets, 6 of them battery backup, 3 of them not. Not very expensive. It's under $100. And so for all your sources and less critical devices, you plug them into that back UPS 850. And for your more critical devices, you plug them into the J35 or J25. Keeps the price about the same as 2 of the back UPS Pro units, but it gives you all the features I would look for a home theater setup.
Yeah, one of the reasons why you don't want to use, and I've run into this before, you don't want to use a battery backup, UPS unit that's not designed for home theater, is that can sometimes mess with your projector. If you've got a projector. This has happened on a number of different installs I've either worked on or been tangentially connected to, where somebody has tried to use, their computer battery backup, and they plug their projector on, and their projector just straight up is like, nope, not doing it. Not good enough, not enough power, not enough whatever. And it should work. It should. But it doesn't. And no one can really predict which projector is going to do it and with which battery backup. They know, at least in everybody's experience, if you buy one that was built for home theater, you won't have a problem. So that's one of the reasons why I like to steer people away from the ones that are built for computers, because you could end up having a problem with some of your gear. You won't know until you do, and then you're going to be like, dude, you said it was going to be okay. Well, I'm telling you right now, it might not be. So go with the good stuff. Justin, not Bieber. Justin is itching to upgrade something. He's got $1,000 to spend, and he wants something new in his dedicated 2-channel setup. Right now, he has an Emotiva PT100 preamp with an Emotiva Bass Axe, A300 stereo amp powering a pair of repaired RBH R55 Ti towers. Bass is handled by SVS PB1000, and his sources are a Chromecast Audio, Echo Dot, and Squeezebox Duet. Dude, Duet? That thing's like a gajillion years old. I used to have one of those. Those things are, I loved it.
Yep,
I did.
he still likes
I
it.
loved it. I love that. I love the Squeeze Box Duet. What was the Squeeze Box, like the standalone unit, like the big one that looked like a CD player?
I didn't super get into the Squeeze Box lineup, so I do not know.
Oh, Clint has one, and I saw it when I was at his house for the hurricane. It was like at the bottom of a closet someplace. I'm like, dude, I coveted that thing so hard. I wanted that so bad. He goes, you can have it, dude. I can't even use it anymore. No. Anyways, he also uses this setup for headphones, and right now he's enjoying a pair of Hi-Fi Man HE400s. Those are the Audis.
No, that's Hi-Fi Man is the brand. So they are planar magnetic, but Audis is a separate company. So they're like competitors. I guess.
When I was looking at the Oppos, I know that name was popping up,
right.
So I got confused with them. So since his cat really does like to attack his RBH towers, you think of switching to bookshelf speakers might be a good idea. And before Tom says get rid of the cat, Justin is more of a dog person, and the cat is his dog's best friend, so he can't do that. And his wife likes the cat too. See the order of importance in Justin's mind, and I approve of that. However, he is also drawn to the Audis LCD2 planar magnetic headphones, and since he's about to have a second baby in the house, he's inclined to think he might get more use of the headphones. So which will be a bigger upgrade, new speakers or new headphones? I don't think you should go with the Audis. I'll be honest with you. You've already got a Hi-Fi Man. They were already planar magnetic headphones. I don't think you should go with them. What about the Sennheiser open back jobbies that are supposed to be super duper good too? What about those?
They actually just have a new model that came out in their 600 series that people are kind of raving about. I haven't heard them, so I don't know, but people in the know are raving about those, because if you go all the way up to their 800s, those are like $1,500, so they're above what he wanted to spend. But yeah, they do have that new model in their 600 series that, I mean, it could be worth an audition if nothing else, right?
Right.
I could see that. Yeah.
I generally
say.
Yeah, I'm steering away from the upgrade of the speakers, to be honest with you. I think you got a good setup there.
Yeah. But the cat keeps attacking those towers, so that's a question mark.
To get the thing, what's the thing I posted on Facebook?
Right, the
cat away thing. The Sonic cat away thing. Try that. Get that as part of this, and then buy some new headphones or whatever, because with the baby.
Yeah, I am thinking to go to something a little bit. I mean, I really like the LCD2s, but every time I've auditioned them and come close to buying them, I'm like, they're not quite perfect. And for that amount of money, I want something that's darn near perfect. It's the HD 660s in the Sennheiser lineup, by the way, are the new ones. It used to be the 650s, now it's the 660s. I'd go out there and give those an audition, because those are something a little bit different than what you already have. And I know that a lot of what Justin likes to do is just try different sounding things.
I would also look at these RBH Beryllium tweeter headphones they're like $150 though, or something like that.
Yeah, they're really
inexpensive.
I
mean, I would drop a little. If you got $1,000 to spend, I would find a way to carve out $150 for these things, just because they're like earbuds, or not earbuds, but whether they're like.
Well, they have a whole lineup, so yeah, they've got in-ear monitors, and they've got regular over-ears as well.
Yeah, I would take a look at those as well.
Okay.
So those are my suggestions. If I was going to spend $1,000 on new speakers and I wanted to get bookshelves, I think they're $1,000 a pop, though. I would look at those like those little CAF monitors. I think those are $1,000.
What, the LS50s?
Yeah, the LS50s.
They're not quite that, but they're up in the $1,500 per pair range, because they always get compared to the Sierra 2s. So they're like contemporaries in price point.
Isn't there another one that like the they just call them the ones? Isn't the CAF one?
Oh, the reference ones?
Yeah, those are even more expensive.
Yeah, they're even more expensive.
I thought they were smaller. I thought there was a smaller version that was a little bit more affordable. Maybe that's the
LS50s.
Anyways, LS50s. So that's kind of what's coming off the top of my head as things that you could maybe take a look at. Anything else?
No, I'm in agreement.
Oh, okay. All right, he's tried a few different headphone amps, but none of them really sound any better with his HE400s than the headphone amp built into his Emotiva PT100. So would that suggest that the PT100 will also be fine powering the Audis LCD2s if he gets those? Well, don't get those. You won't have that problem.
Yeah, the LCD2s are supposed to be harder to drive. Like the HE400s are actually a not super difficult load as far as planar magnetic headphones go.
Right.
The LCD2s are more difficult to drive, so it's quite possible that the PT100 might need a little bit of extra headphone amplifier help with the LCD2s. Yeah, the HE400s are a more efficient headphone than those.
Okay, all these questions have to do with the people that we don't want him to buy. Anyways, Audis has announced a new LCD Classic series that's supposed to come out soon. They're at a lower price point. Would they be a smaller upgrade over the HE400s compared to LCD2s? Well,
No
we don't
idea.
think you should buy no idea, first of all, and we don't think we should buy these anyways. Why buy another planar magnetic headphone? You have a planar magnetic headphone. Buy something different. I see no reason for you to. It's like, I guess there's lots of people out there who do buy the same type of thing over and over again, just with different brands. But I think that you should expand your horizons a little bit. So he's interested in getting the new monoprice monolith desktop headphone amplifier, particularly for its Send Surround processing from DRAC. Have we seen similar processing on any other headphone amps under $500 that we think would be a better choice?
Nope.
Under $500? I don't think so. Not that's coming to
No.
mind.
No, we suspect that is an Oppo OEM jobby that's
Right,
going
right.
on there.
Yeah.
If you are looking for a headphone amp that has that sort of out of your head processing built into it, that's where I'd be pointing you, is that monoprice monolith desktop amp. So I think that's a good one to try. With your current headphones, other than the sense-around processing, I wouldn't necessarily expect there to be a huge audible difference like you already experienced. If your headphone amp is up to the task of powering your current headphones, it's not going to change once you add more amplifier power, because they're going to draw the power that they need, and that's it. They're not going to draw more than they need. So, but the sense-around processing could be something.
So if he gets a separate headphone amplifier, is there a way for him to integrate it into his setup so he can keep all of his sources plugged into the PT100 and switch between using the headphone amp versus using his speakers?
Kinda.
There is. Why would this be? Why can't he just plug like a 1/4-inch jack to like RCA or something like that and go into the back of his headphone amp? I mean, and then every time he wants to use the headphone amp, he just plugs in that into, or even isn't there an output? Isn't there just like
So there's
output
pre-outs because it's a preamp.
So you would just switch those, right?
Yeah, well, I was thinking just have a splitter that comes from the pre-out.
Yeah.
Because he's feeding a separate amplifier for his speakers, and he's feeding potentially a separate headphone amplifier for his headphones. So when you're listening to the speakers, you turn off the headphone amp. When you're listening to the headphones, you turn off the speaker amp, because he can do that. Now, the one little jobby there is that he is using a subwoofer, and the Emotiva PT100 does have a subwoofer out, and when you're using the headphones, you'd want to send a full range signal. So you might have to make a settings change in the PT100 every time you switch over.
Right.
So is that more convenient than just moving over whatever source you want to listen to? I don't know. It might be more convenient to just move over the source you want to listen to at that time to the headphone amp, because then you're not worrying about switching between subwoofer on versus subwoofer off in the Emotiva.
You could split it from the source too, though, right?
Yeah, but then you'd have to split it from all his sources.
That's what I'm saying. That you could split it from all the sources. You could do
could,
it that way.
yeah,
Then you wouldn't have to worry about any of this.
Yep.
So that's another way to do it. Yep. So he asked if we have any info on RBH's replacement for the Impressions series. Our website still says the next generation is coming soon.
Nope.
Finally, he's confused by the lack of mid-tier. What do you want me to say? There's nothing.
I always just like it when we give the one-word answer.
Mid-tier audio streaming devices. He's confused by the lack of these things. There are the inexpensive sticks and streaming boxes, and there are the high-end network streamers, but nothing in between, it seems. He wants something that can natively stream title and lossless FLAC, and he'd like it to have a touch screen. He thought about putting together a RASP touch, but is there something else out there that would fit the bill for him? Isn't there that LG phone that was supposed to be like the world's best everything when it comes to audio? Shouldn't he just buy this?
Well, he already got that portable player, the Pioneer portable player.
Right. That's right. He already has.
Got that.
So what's the problem?
Well, because his wife wants a home system. That's where this is all coming from. Want a home system that you can just have at home, play your title, play your lossless FLAC without the having to plug in the digital player that he's taking with him when he's on the go.
Buy another digital player.
Yeah, that's true. You could get another
Just
one and
buy
just leave it at
one
home.
more.
I mean, honestly,
leave it at home.
my advice here was to just go to Tidal's website. They have a list of all the supported products. But really what this comes down to is the mid-tier is Sonos or Hios or
Right.
MusicCast from Yamaha. That's the mid-tier solution. None of those are a dedicated device that sits there on your network with its own touchscreen. It's built into the Sonos platform, so then you're having to use a phone to control it, or it's built into the Hios platform, so you're having to use the Hios app to control it. They're all that way. Using some kind of app on your phone or tablet to control essentially a wireless whole house audio system. That's the mid-tier. That's where it is. So I don't have a better answer than that, because that's essentially what's out there at the moment.
Yeah. I said just buy one more of what you got. If it works.
Yeah, that's not a bad
you're
idea.
using
Yeah.
it. Just do that. Kyle's friend needs to run a 50-foot extension cable for his Odyssey microphone, as the receiver is located outside the room where his speakers are. He asked Kyle if this would cause any issues. Kyle said he didn't think so, but wanted to check with us to be sure. Is there anything to worry about? It is a mono cable, right?
Yes,
is
a
just
mono
3.5.
Yeah. So yeah, make sure the extension cable is mono, not stereo. That's the thing to look out for.
But you will know if there's going to be a problem, because when you plug it in, it won't immediately go to the Odyssey thingy, right? So if you plug it in, it doesn't immediately go to the Odyssey setup, then you know you've got an issue, because every single one of these receivers does that. It has to be a mono cable. That's the only thing I would worry about. Other than that, I can see no reason why the signal, how it's 50 feet, right? It's not 500 feet. I don't see any reason.
Even if it
signal.
were, this stuff is traveling at very nearly the speed of light. There is nothing to worry about.
Resistance or something at some point if it gets real long, but not much.
No. Yeah, just a mono 3.5 millimeter extension cable. Make sure it's mono. Other than that, you're fine.
Dave recently upgraded the preamp in his living room, and he wants to continue using his old. Oh man, I am so tired. But he wants to continue using his old Integra DTC 9. Isn't it 0.8? Isn't it supposed to be 9.8? Okay, 9.8 preamp, and it's not what it says, it's a hyphen. Preamp in his theater room as an AV switch, since it has legacy connections he wants to use. That's video, XM satellite radio. It's not even called that anymore, is it? Is it still called? Is it XM Sirius? Is it all together? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's
anyways. It's also got some extra HDMI inputs for his multiple sources. His theater room preamp is a Yamaha CXA 5100, which he still wants to handle all the signal processing. So how should he hook everything up, and what settings on the Integra should he use to make it all work how he wants? So you want to plug some of your sources into your Integra, and then plug your Integra into your Yamaha, and have your Yamaha do all the things.
Yeah.
Well, just doing the plugging shouldn't be a problem. Your HDMI output. Does he have HDMI output on that Integra?
Yeah. It's got HDMI switching. Now, I can't recall offhand if it has a Zone 2 HDMI output. If it does not, you would have to make sure that you have set it to send the sound. It'll say in the menu, send the sound to the TV, right? You have that thing of where should the sound come out, from the AV receiver or from the TV. You would have to say, have it come out of the TV so that the HDMI output would pass the audio signal out of the Integra and into the Yamaha. Because otherwise it's doing all the audio decoding itself and stripping out the audio signal from its HDMI output. But that isn't the way I would do this.
Yeah, this is hurting my brain, because I can't think of any way that you can put that in front of and then
here's
and
what
not
I
have
would
it do
do.
the processing, because that's what it does. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Whatever sources you want to plug into the Integra, you plug them into the Integra. Then you send the analog pre-outs from the Integra to the 7.1 analog input of the Yamaha.
Yeah.
When you do that, the Yamaha, I read through its manual to make sure the Yamaha doesn't do any processing to those 7.1 analog inputs. It does not digitize them and apply any processing. So at that point, the Yamaha is essentially just a a volume
Amplifier.
control. That's really
Yeah.
all it is in this signal chain. And then the Yamaha is connected to your external amplifiers, which are connected to your speakers. In this situation, in this scenario, the Yamaha is not doing any processing other than the volume control to the sources that are plugged into your Integra, which means you would want to still have all of your settings in the Integra. So you got sources that are plugged into the Integra. You still set up the Integra as though it's the pre-pro, and then its pre-outs happen to be feeding another pre-pro instead of going directly to the amplifiers. But that Yamaha is essentially just passing that signal through onto the
I'm
amplifiers.
hating this. Go
Then
on.
whatever sources are plugged directly into the Yamaha are, of course, being processed by the Yamaha. It's your older sources that are getting plugged into the Integra. I don't see that as being a really big problem, right? But I don't see a more convenient way of doing this, especially for any analog sources. How are you going to plug analog sources into the Integra, then get it to pass it to the Yamaha, and then have the Yamaha do some kind of decoding and processing to it? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, what you're missing out here is whatever room correction, the RSC, the YPOW, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but the
'Cause
Integra has... I think that Integra has Odyssey because it's going back a ways.
It depends on what he wants.
I know.
If what he wants is for the Yamaha to do all of the sound processing and all of that stuff, then you're going to have to split out some of the things. Now, the
Yeah.
XM radio, that's internal to the Integra, you're
Right.
hosed on that one. But anything that's getting S video, it's got to have RCA or something else for, or maybe even optical or something like that you can send out. That source, could send that source's audio to the Yamaha directly, and then just use the S video going out the video to go to your from the
Integra can up convert the analog video to HDMI, so that works.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. So we've given you the two scenarios, Dave. One is you plug your sources into the Integra. You make sure that the Integra's HDMI output is set to send the audio signal out of the HDMI input instead of having the Integra handle all the audio and therefore strip the audio signal out of the HDMI output. If you have analog audio sources, I don't know what you're going to do with that. You're going to have analog outputs that go to your Yamaha in that case. But for your digital sources, this could be done. For your digital sources, you could send them out of the Integra into Yamaha. I don't think it's worth doing that. I say whatever's plugged into the Integra, let the Integra handle the processing and just have the Yamaha as essentially an analog pass-through to your amplifiers. That's what I would do in your situation because I don't think your older sources, I don't think it's critical enough to have your Yamaha processing it instead of having the Integra process it. But
Yeah.
two solutions.
You're probably right. Either way will work. Greg is planning to buy a new TV during the Black Friday sales. He wants a 65-inch or larger and has $1,500 to spend. What TV should he look out for, and do we have any Black Friday sale tracking sites we recommend? For the second one, I do not.
I'm not a good resource for that. I don't pay attention.
My
to Black
resource
Friday.
is Google. Is Google telling me on my phone that's Newegg has a deal? That's.
I mean,
how
honestly,
find
setting
things.
up a Google alert for the models that you're looking for, that's a pretty good way to do it. Because you're like, hey, anytime this model gets mentioned, send me an alert. And wherever it is, you'll get that alert.
Oh, jeez. Right. You're going to get so many alerts.
Yes.
This is what I'd be looking for. Any TV that I would consider would not have edge lighting. It would have local zones and as many zones as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not sure exactly what he's looking for, but it's almost impossible not to get 4K these days. So you're going to get 4K. You might as well get the whole kit and caboodle, and be looking for things that had Dolby Vision and all the other processing that goes along with that, which is kind of hard to find these days. A little bit. There's not quite as many models, but if those would be those would top my list if they had Dolby Vision.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm like I am a big fan of Dolby Vision. No secret there. So the models that you would look out for that do support Dolby Vision that come in a 65-inch size would be the Vizio M series, the Vizio P series, Sony's X930E series, which maybe it would get down to that price. And of course, LG's OLED TVs, which I really don't think the 65-inch is going to get down to $1,500. That would be truly shocking, and they would fly off the
one
shelves.
of them.
If you're willing to forego having Dolby Vision, Sony's X900E is a really nice television. Doesn't have Dolby Vision and won't have Dolby Vision, but in every other way, a really nice TV that might hit that price point on Black Friday. So if you're a super duper Samsung fan, their MU8000 series would maybe be worth considering, but I'm a bigger fan in this case of the Sony X900E if you're not going to have Dolby Vision. So those are the models: Vizio M, Vizio P, Sony X930E, Sony X900E. That's what I would set alerts for.
I feel like you can get like an M series right now for pretty close.
Oh, absolutely.
What are they right now? I mean, they're not $1,500, 65 inches.
Oh, yeah,
I feel like you can get that right now.
But
so
if
you're going to end up
waiting for a sale. Yeah.
If you're waiting for a sale, you're going to put a lot of that money back in your pocket if you end up with the Vizio M series.
Yeah.
Carl. First, we want to mention that Carl had a question about whole house surge suppressors and whether it is redundant to also have individual surge protection devices at each outlet. After that, we talked about that in our interview with Charlie Jones from SurgeX. So make sure, Carl, you check out that podcast whenever I get it posted to hear that answer. So, when Carl saw Blade Runner 2049 at a Dolby Cinema, lights and other stuff in the ceiling rattled like crazy when low bass would hit. He was almost afraid the lights were going to follow the ceiling. He saw it again in IMAX Laser, and there was rattling in the theater too, although less than at the Dolby Cinema, and only in certain scenes. He's never experienced this in either of those theaters before, even in other movie theaters with a lot of bass. So is Blade Runner 2049 just poorly mixed in the low frequencies? I don't want to call it poorly mixed. Did someone from Beats sneak in the mission and then in the mixing session? He says. So as a sort of aside here, he and his wife preferred the IMAX Laser presentation over the Dolby Cinema, simply due to the screen size, although the Dolby Cinema had nicer seats. They also loved the Ultra HD Blu-ray of the original Blade Runner, and it's the first Atmos mix that Carl had, that had Carl turning his head a few times to look behind him, and his wife was so convinced that there was water leaking from their ceiling that she got up to make sure they hadn't left the sink running in the kitchen upstairs. So
Blade Runner is a wet movie. You feel wet by the end of that thing.
Yes, you do feel moist by the end. Everybody seems to be cold and miserable in it. So did they? No, I mean, there's probably sounds in there that are lower than anything that, or maybe you just happen to be hitting a lot of resonant frequencies in the theaters that you've been going to. Maybe there's just a lot of low end stuff that's happening. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it, Rob?
Yep, I saw Blade Runner 2049. Yep.
Did you love it, like it, or leave it?
I liked it.
That's what I've heard.
It was very fitting with the original Blade Runner. So I think they work well together. It's just some of the ideas, I'm like, that no one would design a robot that way. It just there's no reason to do it. So
right.
it's a little hard for me to suspend all of my disbelief. But as far as this goes, Scott Wilkinson over at AVS Forum, he actually, as he always does, went to a Dolby Cinema and measured the sound levels. And when he did it in A-weighted, he's like, it actually was surprisingly a little bit below reference volume. It wasn't an average 85 dB all the way across. It was like 82. It was a little bit below. But when he does the Z weighting, or essentially no weighting, which brings in all of the bass, which A weighting filters out, he's like, oh, that movie was actually about 15 decibels louder than any movie he's ever measured before. So they did goose the bass like crazy in Blade Runner 2049. So yeah, it is just way louder in the bass. They get away with it because reference volume is A-weighted in theaters. So they were under reference volume as far as A-weighting was concerned, but you throw the bass in there and it was crazy loud. So yeah, that seems to be the case.
Dan has a living room set up that opens into his kitchen. The full space is L-shaped, with the living room being roughly 15 by 16, and then the kitchen being roughly 20 by 15. But that's at the back. The ceiling is 9.5 feet high with tray ceilings. So when they say that, is that 9.5 to the tray or 9.5 to the center there? I'm going to say center. Right now, he's using a Yamaha RX V675 with an Energy Take Classic 5.1 speaker package. He would like to upgrade everything in the sound system and eventually have an Atmos setup, but he wants to do it in stages as time and funds become available. Okay, so we got some pictures here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at them for the first time in my life. And there is a... So it looks like he's got a mount that allows him to lower his TV, which is kind of cool.
Yes, he does. Yeah. So he's
down
got it
to
mounted
eye
above his
level there.
fireplace. Yeah, but then he can pull it down so that it's not up so high. Nice thing to do.
It's a very common layout that I am seeing here. So let's just go there. So what should he upgrade first? Receiver, front speakers, subwoofer, they'll all be replaced eventually, but what should be the order? Can I say room treatments? Because I'm seeing a lot of hard surfaces in here. But I mean, what are you going to notice the most difference from his Energy Take series? I mean, he's sitting. These are very small speakers, but he doesn't seem to be sitting that far away from them.
I mean, at least 13 feet, I would say.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like. In this case, because I really don't like the placement of his front, left, right speakers.
You mean all the way into the corners? Yeah,
all the way into the corners and too high. I would get myself a pair of front, left, right speakers as my first upgrade in this particular case. That's my vote. And I would position them better.
I'm looking.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused by this hand-drawn thing. So there's that angled couch that is angled towards not the TV. Kind of weird.
Yeah, and then there's a couch over on the side as well. So it's set up so that they can talk to one another on the couch, I would assume, is the idea.
Why on God's green earth would you want to talk to people when there's a TV there to pay attention to? I think
the hand-drawn thing makes the angle of the couch look a little bit more extreme, because if you look at the photos, it's not that extreme of an
confused by what I'm seeing. Yeah, I can get behind that. Front, left, right speakers, getting them off the wall and maybe down closer to the ground, like on stands, or as tower speakers. I can get behind that. I don't think you're going to pressurize this area. I don't think you really want to.
No,
to be honest with you.
Much. Plus, budget is a concern too. So he gets into the subwoofer though. So
we'll talk about that in a second. But when your theater opens up into your kitchen, pressurizing your area suddenly becomes a much. I mean, even if you like, let's say I've got $1 bajillion, just won the lottery. I want to pressurize my whole house. Okay, yes, it can be done. But do you really want to? Because you've got glassware in your kitchen, and you're going to spend all your time tracking down all the things that are rattling in there so that you can enjoy your movie without, all the noise. So, I can get behind the front 3 speakers. The house came with a pair of speakers. Okay, wait. So he asked what should be upgraded first, and then what should be the order. So front 3 speakers, I think. I think I would
get a sub.
Add a sub. I agree with that. Then you could upgrade the receiver.
Yep.
And take advantage of Atmos speakers, which are going to be the cheapest things. And honestly, you're very close to going in descending order of how much things are going to cost, depending on what receiver you buy. So you might end up pretty good there. So the house came with a pair of speakers already in the ceiling that he isn't using at the moment, and they're the front speakers. And the front speakers already had wires running the walls, which is why they're positioned way up high and basically in the corner. He kind of wants floor standing front, left, right speakers, but he's trying to keep the price down to around $300 a pair, and he figures a 5.2.4 Atmos configuration would be his end goal, with the existing ceiling speakers already being where the top middles would go, so we could probably just add front heights. So what would we suggest in terms of the final configuration and placement of speakers in his room? All right, so he's saying that he's got speakers above him. I see them right by the fan there.
In ceiling speakers that are already up there.
That he could use top middles. Now, your front left and right speakers that you currently have up there, you could use as front heights with a little bit of cheating of the wires.
Exactly.
Over. And then, Yeah, so you've already got those wires run, and
Yeah.
then all you need to do is get a little. Yeah, it looks like he's got an equipment rack. Is that what's on the right side
Yep,
there? In
that's
that
what's
right
on
corner?
the right corner there. That's his equipment rack. Yep.
And then you just run actual speaker wire to your front, left, right, and center speaker right there, and you
Yep.
are golden.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm
That's-
in full agreement. I think that's it.
That's what I would do. I have to scroll back down. So he definitely wants new front, left, right, center speakers, which we recommend. Keep in mind, it's $300 a pair budget. $300 a pair. I thought they were $300 each. Anyways, He's considering the ELAC debut, but is open to suggestions. Well, he likes small speakers, so we got the NHT Super Zeros or the Zeros, whatever ones.
Yeah, the
ones he can
NHT
afford.
Super series, because there's the Super Center and there's the Super 1 bookshelf speakers, which would fit in here.
Right.
So that's, NHT Super series, absolutely.
Love to suggest the Impression series speakers, but they don't seem to exist right now. So
Right. Yep.
you'd have to maybe wait to see what happens with those. $300 a pair.
SVS
could go
primes
to
are a little bit over that.
Yeah, you could go to Accessories for Less and look at the Kef bookshelf speakers they have there.
Yeah. And then
Those are around
Aperian's
$300.
Intimus series in the Stealth Black would work. And Ascend's SE series, the CBM 170s or the HTM 200s, those would work as well.
What about
but the
those
ELAC debuts
HSUs?
are nice speakers too. Yeah, you're right. Although those are a
HSUs.
little bit more expensive than this price point, but not very much at all. Yeah, the HB1 Mark IIs.
They have one with
HC1
like a
Mark
yellow
IIs.
woofer now, don't they? They have some sort
That's
of
much more
concentric
expensive
one.
though. That's
Yeah, but I just-
CB8 or whatever.
Kind of noticed that one recently, but anyways.
Yeah, quite a few choices here, honestly. I mean, there's looks that are to be considered in this as well. I mean, if you're leaning ELAC debut series, I have no qualms with that. Those are good
Fine with that.
speakers in this price range. So there's no reason for me to steer you away from those. We just mentioned other ones that maybe you haven't looked at them yet and you want to, but I mean, the Ascends certainly aren't going to win any prizes for looks. Aperian Intimus in the flat black that they have now, not really going to win anything for looks. The NHTs, Super Series, pretty plain black as well. You know, the Prime series from SVS, nicer looking, but a little bit more expensive. The HSU's pretty darn plain looking, so, you know, none of them are super duper lookers in this case.
Well, the Impression series are about the only ones that look decent.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, but they're not here anymore, so gotta wait for second gen of them.
Yet. Well, no, we'll see what happens.
Honestly,
So
if you
does-
like the ELAC debuts, I say get them because they're good speakers, they look nice, and they're in this price point.
There you go. So he asked, does he need to upgrade his surrounds? And what about using existing Energy Take Classic speakers for Atmos duty? Are they good enough? They've been good enough for you so far. I would say not worry about this right now. I would say use them as your surrounds.
Yep.
Use them as your top fronts or top heights
Yeah,
or
front
whatever we're
heights.
calling.
Front heights. Yeah. Actually, you barely even have to touch them. They're like, pretty kind of leave them where they are, and those are now your front heights instead.
And so I don't know that I would just not worry about this right now. And it's going to actually roll right into this next question, which is actually the question after that. The subwoofer, he's willing to spend around $500 and eventually add a second one in the future. So SVS PB1000, is there something else he should consider?
At that price point,
I don't know that
That's the
there
one to
is
get.
anything else at the price point. $500. This is the magic price point for SVS. The PP1000. You have a big room, but that's a big sub. So build a box. I keep saying it, but I'll say it until you actually do. And was it like at least once or twice a year, somebody emails and said, "I should have built the box." I'm like, I know.
you
know.
won't get full
If only someone
pressurization
had
in this
told you.
space, but you know, like we said, you don't want it. And the PB1000 is so well protected, it'll never bottom out. It'll never hurt itself. So.
Yeah. So for the receiver, he has the Denon X4300H. He's open to other suggestions. My suggestion is don't worry about the receiver. Okay.
Just yet.
You have got speakers to buy, your front three speakers to buy. You've got a subwoofer to buy. You have perhaps a second subwoofer to buy if you're considering that, though we'll see if that actually ever materializes. Before you even consider.
The
receiver.
X4300H might not be available by that time in the future.
You don't want to buy it now because yes, it's a great price now, but believe me, it seems to be there's always something over at Accessories for Less,
Yeah.
or there's about to be something at Accessories for Less that we're like, this is the one to buy.
If the X4300H is gone, the X4400H will be there to replace
That's
it.
right.
So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the same thing when I was saying about the surround speakers. The surround speakers are the last thing you're going to be worrying about here. If you get the front 3 speakers and you're like, okay, this is not working for me, well, then you can change your priorities and get some new surrounds.
Then you know you have to upgrade them. Yeah.
But if you're like, these are fine, you know what I want you to do? I want you to contact me again when you have bought all the things that we've gone through all this, and you're like, okay, well, I kept the energy takes. I'm now I'm wondering if I will experience a difference if I upgrade to something that matches my current speakers, in which case I will probably say, well, how do you like the ones you have? And you'll say, well, they sound fine, I guess, but I just wonder if it would be better. And we're going to say it probably will be just fine. Don't spend any more money on it. So there we go. The receiver, just wait on that. Just wait until you're closer to actually buying and then come back to us. Bill the Stumper. I hope he doesn't have another stumping question because I'm tired and my brain is mush. Bill's dedicated theater room is 19 feet long and 13.5 feet wide and a little over 8 feet tall. It's rectangular, enclosed, completely light controlled, and soundproofed. And he's acoustically treated it according to our recommendation. He's really happy with the results. He only really cares about the sound in his front row of seats. So he has a single SVSP B13 Ultra in the back right corner. And according to the Odyssey Editor app Aftergraph, he's got a little bit of a dip remaining at 50 hertz, but it's pretty darn flat other than that, at least at his primary seat. So he can't stop himself from wondering what having a second subwoofer might sound like, though. And he's already pre-wired for the front left corner for a second sub when he built the room. And he has a SB1000 in another part of the house that could potentially use for testing purposes. How big is this room again? 19 by 13 by 8. What he lacks, though, is time. So would it be worth it to experiment with the SB1000 just to get an idea of what dual subs would offer? Is the SB1000 sufficient for the task or would only be misleading? And would he have to do a full Odyssey measurement? Again, it takes so much time. Dude, you are like first world problems because when I started in this industry, there was no automatic room correction. There was none of that. The SMS1, when that came out, from Velodyne, and you could see the graph and make adjustments manually. We're like, this is amazing. This is the most amazing tool that's ever been created. Nothing will ever be better than this. That measurement takes you 15 minutes. Come on, 15 minutes. I understand. As a man who's very, very time stressed, I see. I often complain about not having time, but the thing is, you don't have to worry about placement. You throw it in the corner. It's the opposite corner.
For the test, you can just say you have a 2.2 setup. It takes much less time because then it's only measuring the two front. It doesn't allow you to have less than 2 front speakers, but you can say I have 2.2, and then it's only sending out 4 test signals instead of 13. Right, if you have a full Atmos setup,
right?
So that reduces the time. The SB1000 for the setup purposes only has to be able to hit 75 dB. 19 by 13 by 8 should be fine to do that. So if you want to run the experiment, I don't think it's a waste of time. I don't think it'll be super misleading. If you just want to see what the results are by having a second sub in the diagonally opposite corner, I think the SB1000 is up to the task in this case. And,
so when we're looking at these graphs here, the before and after graph, the question you're going to be asking yourself is how much of a difference am I going to hear? Well, at your primary seat, I don't know that you're going to hear much of anything.
Next to nothing, I would expect.
It doesn't really look like you're hearing anything. But once you start to move around that room, and you may have even noticed at your seat as you lean from one side, like if you tend to like me, I tend to lean on one side of the chair, then I'll lean on the other side of the chair or whatever, tilt my head back or whatever. You may notice some differences there, but probably not much. But once you go from seat to seat, that's when you're really going to need to notice it. So the PB13 Ultra has more than enough output. So if a second subwoofer would really be worthwhile, what should he get to pair with it? And could it be a sealed model that could be a smaller physical size? Yeah, if you got the money, it could be. The PB13 Ultra, I mean, in your room size, is absolutely crushing it. right?
Oh, it's complete overkill for that room size.
It's absolutely crushing it. So if you wanted to get a 19 by 13 by 8. If you wanted to get like a PB 2000 or a
PB 2000 would be fine. Yeah, PC 2000 would be fine. But so if it's footprint, I'd go PC 2000. So that'd be fine. If it's sealed, so SB 2000, is that? I mean, I'd put it closer to your seats. I'd put the SB 2000 closer to your seats.
Yeah,
and put the PB 13 Ultra farther away. And the PB 13 Ultra came with all those port plugs. You can seal it. So if you're worried about the roll-off at the bottom end being similar, you can turn your PB13 Ultra into a sealed sub, and that takes care of that. Yep.
Yeah.
That can work. Otherwise, in SVS's lineup, you'd have to go all the way up to an SB13 Ultra for another sealed. So at that point, I would point you over to Rhythmic. I'd say go get a sealed Rhythmic sub.
Yeah.
Because you don't need SB13 Ultra output in this room. You don't need it. So why spend that much?
Yeah.
Or an HSU ULS15. That would work.
What about the JL Audios? I mean, they had that E series for a while. Is that still around?
It's still more expensive than HSU or Rhythmic at this.
I know. Everything level. JL Audio is more expensive, unfortunately. Yeah. But, they at least have a sealed sub that is a reasonable-ish price. What is it, like $1,000 or something like that? Is that right?
$1,200, I think, is where it starts.
Yeah. Anyways, another label, another brand to consider.
Yeah.
Byron says he just got his theater to about 95% complete, but now he's being sent off to a new location by the Navy, so he's going to be packing everything up and moving to a new house just in time. He told his wife that the new place has to have enough room for his 4 subwoofers, or else it's a deal breaker. He refuses to go back. I guess to 2 or 1. In the meantime, he's installed 3-inch thick absorption panels with air gaps behind them. Holy crap, dude. Overall, things sound very good, but there are particular frequencies, sometimes more one syllable in a voice or one note in a song, that rings longer than all the other sounds and is reverberant. What is the solution to that problem? Does he need more panels? Different panels, something to do with the speaker placement or seating. Dude, For really real, you need to do nothing. You are moving. This might completely change in your new room. Okay?
But he's worried about the future room doing this as well. He wants to know
No, you get into the new room and then you call us.
Yes,
do not buy anything now. But if you're going to fix this room and you know that there's you have to figure out what the frequency is. You got to use Room EQ Wizard or whatever. Figure out what that ringing frequency is, and then you have to buy or create a trap, a bass trap or sound absorber trap, I don't know what else to call it, that basically is targeting on that frequency. What does it do? It resonates at that same frequency and absorbs all that sound energy, so it's nothing else is getting it, basically.
Yeah, it reverberates at that particular frequency and therefore cancels out the sound wave at that. So it's a tuned membrane bass trap. GIC sells them. They call them their Scopus bass traps. They also offer tuned membranes that they can build into their other regular absorptive, wideband absorptive bass traps. You can add a tuned membrane onto that. And that's what it's for. When you have these particular frequencies that ring, and every room has them. Every room has a particular reverberant frequency and its harmonics. So it's going to exist. But when you move to a new room, it's a different frequency, because it depends on the dimensions of your room and the construction of that room and all kinds of other things. So there's no point.
Also, buy a new couch. They'll watch everything change again.
That's right.
Now you've got a membrane that's now ringing in your room. You're like, what the heck's going on over there?
Yeah.
No, that's.
But that is how you solve this. It's a tuned membrane bass trap is what solves it.
Do not buy one of those things right now, dude.
Not right now. Don't get it right now.
Don't get it now. David is almost finished with construction of his dedicated theater. 2 or 3 weeks left, he says, and he needs some advice on setup for pressurization. His speakers are all golden ear, and the room is 22 feet 9 inches long, 20 feet wide, and 9.5 high, or about 4,300 cubic feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're looking at a picture, y'all.
It's a complicated diagram, but we get the idea.
Back row riser, front row 3-5 recliners. Nice. It's very wide. Pull out trash can. 30-inch sink with disposal. All right, I'm not reading all that.
Well, that's the other side of the theater. I just want to show the door.
We always recommend setting all speakers to small and yes for subwoofer, but his mains are Triton 1s. Oh, Jesus.
Here we go.
Lee, stop it. You're infecting people. Lee. I blame Lee for this. We always recommend setting all speakers to small and yes for subwoofer, but his mains are Triton 1s, which have built-in subwoofers, and the Golden Ear manual says, and Sandy Grossman's setup tips say to use large and yes when connecting the LFE out input on the Triton 1s. Why the difference in advice and who is right? We are right. Sandy Grossman doesn't want you to not buy his speakers that have the subwoofers in them because they cost more. Listen, I know you want to use the woofers that are in there. You're using them.
Yes.
You're using them down to 80 hertz. That's what you need them for. You need them to get you down to 80 hertz with authority, and they are doing that. Good job, team. High five. Stop playing after 80 hertz, okay? Because the subwoofers are placed in the place that is best for bass. Unless you have located your towers on top of your subwoofers, they are not in the best place for bass. Therefore, they are useless, and they are only going to mess stuff up.
He's got a challenge in this setup, though, so here we go.
All right. So, wait a second here. There we go. In either case, does he still need additional subs to properly pressurize the room? And if he's guessing the answer is yes. You mean over the top of his towers? Yes.
Right, yes.
Okay. In which case, what SVS sub should he buy? He's looking at the SB2000, SB13 Ultra, and the SB16 Ultra. Well, he likes the sealed boxes.
He does.
He only has one spot to put an additional sub in the back left corner. An SB16 Ultra would fit, but he's not sure what his wife will say about adding something that large to the room. So if he can go with one of the smaller ones that still pressurize the room, he'd prefer that.
So first of all, an SB13 Ultra is up to the task of pressurizing this room size, so you don't have to go up to the 16 Ultra. The SB13 Ultra do it, but he can only put one of them in here. Now,
Why?
rear left corner, that's fine. He has a Triton 1 tower essentially in the front right corner. Could we go slightly crazy town? You still set both of your front left right speakers to small. You still give them an 80 hertz or so crossover. But when you wire up your subwoofers, you wire one in the rear left corner, an SB13 Ultra would be up to this task, and then you wire via an RCA subwoofer cable the powered bass section of your front right Triton 1 tower. That gives you diagonally opposite corner placement of two subwoofers, essentially. But we know from previous people writing in that Triton 1 tower doesn't play as low as an SB13 Ultra. But that's about as good as you can do in here, isn't it? Because what else are you going to do? He can't fit a second SB13 Ultra in here. There's nowhere to put it. Could you put it on your stage? Could you put it on your front stage towards the front right corner of this room? Is that doable? Are you there, Tom?
Yeah. I'm only catching every fifth word or so. But yes.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. And I agree with it, but you're right. It does sound like Crazy Town because you're like, essentially, he's got his front right speaker in the corner anyways.
Yes.
Now he's going to say, well, if I'm going to use that one as a subwoofer, why wouldn't I use my other one as a subwoofer? Because it's not diagonally across from my actual subwoofer. That's why.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's fine. I agree with what Rob said, even though it is Crazy Town.
Slightly. I mean, it's not utterly absurd. I mean, the bass sections in those Triton 1 towers are pretty powerful. They're pretty good. But what we're trying to get is the diagonally opposite placement of two subwoofers.
I hate to
That's
say
what
it,
we're
but
trying to
man,
get.
wouldn't it be nice if instead of having towers, you had bookshelves and you could actually put an SB13 in the front right corner and then use it as a stand for your bookshelf speaker and then just have a stand for your left bookshelf speaker? Wouldn't that be nice? I'm just going to throw that out there as an option.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says, I always recommend a crossover 80 hertz, but SVS's Merlin tool advises using an SB16 Ultra in the crossover 40 hertz with his speakers. Again, why the difference? Dude, you're going to believe Merlin over me? For real.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're just looking at negative 3 dB roll-off points according to the specifications of a speaker manufacturer's website and saying, okay, set the subwoofer at the negative 3 dB point. There is another huge factor in this equation, which is the room. They don't know what room you're putting these in. The room determines where the bass from the front, left, right speakers starts to become uneven, particularly from seat to seat. What we're trying to get is not only linear bass, but uniform bass. That's why we need dual subwoofers optimally placed in the room to create linear and uniform bass across all of your seats. And where your front, left, and right speakers are just doesn't do that. So that's where all of this comes from. What's being left out from Sandy Grossman's recommendations, from Merlin's recommendations, what's being left out of those is the room, which is a huge variable and a huge factor in all of this. So that's where all of this is coming from.
I'm going to assume you stopped talking.
I did.
Did you stop talking? Okay.
Yes.
Because that was...
This is rough.
I wish you could hear what I'm hearing. This is just very... You guys actually get to
don't
hear
know
what I
why.
say when I don't have Rob to like cue me into what the right answer is, because sometimes I'm like, Rob, dude, I literally opened the question list for this podcast as this podcast started, so I haven't read any of these questions. So I have vaguest idea of what he's saying. So we're gonna do one more, then we're gonna be done.
Okay.
Josh thought he had a handle on the dual subwoofers, but then tried to help out someone asking about dual subwoofers on Reddit, and it led down a rabbit hole of confusing replies and disagreement. Well, there's your first problem right there. You're on Reddit. And how you tried to help somebody. God help your poor soul. So how many dB do you actually gain by just bringing a second subwoofer into the room? Some people are saying 6 dB, while others saying they're 3. How much louder do each of those actually sound, and what would sound twice as loud? Okay, so if you co-locate them on top of each other,
or directly side by
6 dB.
side.
Yeah, 6 dB I think is what you can get. If you put them in the room together, playing the same thing, not co-located, I think you get about 3 dB. And I'm hoping Rob is agreeing with me right now.
Yep, that is the situation. Co-located, so stacked or directly side by side, you get +6. Across the room from one another, which is what we're always recommending, you get about +3. But there's a really weird thing that happens, right? So you go from one sub, let's say it's in your front left corner, and you bring in a second identical sub and you put it in the rear right corner, you get about +3 dB. Now let's say you bring in 2 more subs. You put one in the front right corner and one in the rear left corner now, and you would say, okay, so if I went from 1 to 2 subs and that got me +3 dB, then going from 2 to 4 subs ought to get me another +3 dB, right? Well, not really. Because what you get is very, very uniform even bass, free from peaks and dips, but the sound pressure level when you go from the 2 to the 4, in some instances, it actually goes down by like 1 or 2 dB because you no longer have any crests. You no longer have any peaks in the response. So when you measure the pink noise, which is all of the sound coming out all at once, you don't have any of those little peaks anymore. So the actual measured sound pressure level can sometimes go down because it's much more uniform, but not necessarily louder. What would sound twice as loud? That's a little bit tough to understand. So first of all, decibel. There are 10 decibels in one bell. That's exactly what the name means. So technically, if you go up 10 decibels, one bell, you have become exactly twice as loud. In a fully anechoic setting, that would be true. If there is no boundary reinforcement of any kind, you're completely anechoic, 10 decibels would be twice as loud by definition. But we are in a room that has reinforcement, boundary reinforcement, which means normally something in the range of about 6 decibels louder sounds twice as loud to our perception. We perceive it as being about twice as loud when the actual sound pressure level went up by about 6 decibels. Now, he also had the thing on Reddit where some people were saying 3 decibels is twice as loud. No. It's twice as much power. Takes twice as much power to get 3 more decibels, but it doesn't sound twice as loud because decibels are on a logarithmic scale. There's a curve going on. It's not just a linear line, not just a straight line. It's a curve, a logarithmic curve. So a lot of confusion there, but +3 dB is 2 times as much power. +10 dB is anechoically, literally twice as loud, and that is 10 times as much power because it's on a logarithmic scale. But In most rooms, plus 6 dB, we perceive as being twice as loud. Hope that clears that up.
I can't wait to go back and listen to this podcast and figure out what the heck you were talking about.
Like you ever listen back to the podcast.
It's never going to happen. He's been saying that adding a second sub is less about making things louder and more about making the frequency response more even and uniform throughout the room. He's also been under the impression that if you have a small, inexpensive sub and you want to make it louder, the way to do that is to get a larger, more capable sub rather than adding a second small, inexpensive sub. Does he have all of that correct? Yeah, okay. So the first part, yes. Adding a second sub is less about making things louder and more about making the frequency response more even and uniform throughout the room. Yes. He's been under the impression that you have a small, inexpensive sub and you want to make it louder. The way to do that is to throw it out and get a better sub. That is also correct. Yes. You're correct. You're right. All the Redditors were wrong.
Yeah, the one slight exception is if you get the second small, inexpensive sub and you stack it on top of the first one, it will be louder.
It's true.
I mean, that's just objectively true. It will be louder. You don't get
still be
any
crap,
you don't get any of the benefits of more even and uniform bass. You don't get any of that because they're both in the same location. And it's not going to make it play any lower or have any less distortion or sound any better. It just got louder by stacking them on top of each other or putting them directly side by side. So that's the one little caveat to what you said. But for all the advice that we give here on AVRant, you have it exactly correct. Yeah.
Okay. I have no idea what you just said. Okay, so we are going to end this podcast because this is ridiculous. I cannot understand Rob, and that is just making this conversation extremely frustrating, and I am too tired to care. So, Rob, what questions will we be answering next week because we didn't finish this week?
Yes, so we have Scott, and we have Jim, David, and scrolling down, Tony. Those were the ones that we had the full questions listed for today. Now, we did also receive questions from Tate, Rob W., and Jack. I got those kind of late on Sunday night, but we did receive your questions, just so you know that we got them, to let you know.
Okay.
That's it. Next week.
All right, great. Let's thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Nate, David, and Daniel for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and they left us a PayPal donation. So thank you, Nate, David, and Daniel.
Yeah, Nate, Daniel, David, thank you so much for those donations. Appreciate it.
I have no idea why I keep reading those out of order, but I am. That's what's happening. Also want to thank our 30 patrons from Patreon, including Kyle, for your patronage, because we really appreciate it. We're going to take all these monies and use it to support the podcast and then pay for hosting fees and that sort of thing. So
thank you, Patreon patrons, and thanks, shout out to Kyle G for letting us know he's one of them.
Also want to thank James, Josh, and David for talking us up to SVS, Accessories for Less, and HT Market, respectively. We always appreciate that. Thank you, James, Josh, and David.
Yeah, James, Josh, David, congrats on your purchases. And I do want to let a couple people wrote in on either Sunday night or Monday with other ways that they supported. You will be mentioned next week. You will be listeners of the week next week. We got those.
All right. We appreciate it. All right. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.